Even more immediate and direct security threat comes from our dependence on foreign oil. The price of a barrel of oil is now the most dangerous weapon in the world, one of the most dangerous weapons in the world. Tyrants from Caracas, Venezuela, to Tehran in Iran use it to prop up their regimes, intimidate international communities, and hold us hostage to a market that's subject to their whims. Just to give you an example, if Iran decided to shut down the petroleum-rich Strait of Hormuz tomorrow, they believe oil will skyrocket to $300 a barrel in minutes, a price that one speculator predicts would result in $12 a gallon gas. $12 a gallon. The nearly $700 million a day we send to unstable and hostile nations also funds both sides of the war on terror, paying for everything from madrasas that plant the seeds of terror in young minds to the bombs that go off in Baghdad and Kabul. Our oil addiction even presents a target for Osama bin Laden, who has told al-Qaeda, and I quote, "Focus your operations on oil since this will cause the Americans to die off on their own," unquote. If we stay on our current course, the rapid growth of nations like China and India will rise about a third by 2030. In the same year, Middle Eastern regimes will be sitting on 83% of our global oil reserves. Let me explain this. 83% of the oil in the world is going to be in the Middle East. Imagine that, the very source of energy that fuels nearly all of our transportation, controlled by some of the world's most unstable and undemocratic governments. That's not the future I want for America. We are not a country that places our fate in the hands of dictators and tyrants. We're a nation that controls our own destiny. That's who we are. That's who we are, and that's who we've always been. It's what led us to wage a revolution that brought down an empire. It's how we built an arsenal of democracy to defeat fascism and stopped the spread of communism with the power of our ideals. And that's why we have to end the tyranny of oil in our time, in this generation. Now, I recognize this is a debate we're having in this campaign, but understand, we've been having this debate for decades now. We've heard promises about energy independence from every single U.S. president since Richard Nixon. We've heard talk about curbing our use of fossil fuels in nearly every State of the Union address since the oil embargo of 1973. Back then, we imported a third of this nation's oil. We now import over half. So during all this talk, we've actually increased our dependence on foreign oil. Now, a few days ago, Senator John McCain said, I'm quoting, "Our dangerous dependence on foreign oil has been 30 years in the making and was caused by the failure of politicians in Washington to think long-term about the future of the country," unquote. I could not agree more. John McCain is exactly right. The only problem is that during those 30 years of inaction, Senator McCain was one of those politicians in Washington for 26. And during the 26 years that he was there, he's achieved little to help reduce our dependence on foreign oil. He voted against raising our fuel mileage standards when it could have made such a difference over the last couple of decades. And he joined George Bush in opposing legislation twice in the last year that included tax credits for more efficient cars. He's voted against alternative sources of energy, against clean biofuels, against solar power, against wind power, against an energy bill that represented the largest investment in renewable sources of energy in the history of this country. So when John McCain talks about the failure of politicians in Washington to do anything about our energy crisis, understand that John McCain should look in the mirror because he has been part of that failure.